It's Mackey and Judd with Rami.
Join the Minnesota Vikings, Frederick Spielman, Mike Zimmer. Great job. Justin Jefferson and Jeff Gladney in the first round. Jefferson, wide receiver, LSU. Gladney, cornerback, TCU. I love the 2 fourth-round picks. James Lynch, defensive lineman, Baylor, and Troy Dye, linebacker, Oregon.
Man, you add Justin Jefferson to the mix. Unlike, and I'm sorry, Packers fans, you needed a wide receiver. Well, they lost Stephon Diggs, and they went out and got a new Stephon Diggs for their offense, and that's what Justin Jefferson can do. But it didn't stop there. Jeff Gladney, to me, was the third best corner in this draft. While he is only 5'10", a little over 5'10", he does have the ability to make a tremendous amount of plays on the football.
I haven't found a negative thing said about the Vikings draft in 72 hours. Mackey and Judd with Rami, Score North and the Score North app. And you can always subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or the aforementioned Score North app. And gentlemen, let's start the show. We're going to get into The Last Dance. We're going to get into all kinds of things recapping the draft that was this past weekend. And bonus action movie rewind tomorrow on the show, because we didn't give you that on Friday last week. So we're going to have a double dose this week. But what is, with all the positive reviews about the Vikings draft, and I think the worst letter grade I've seen is like a B+. Otherwise, everyone who did letter grades is A minus, B+. What is your favorite thing about the Vikings draft from any of the 15 picks, anywhere you want to go with this? Your favorite thing about the Vikings draft this last weekend?
Getting 15 picks, right? I mean, is that not Rick
Judd
being
just
Rick?
stole my answer.
Getting
Judd
15
just stole my answer.
It's in the modern era 7-round draft. It's the record, and so Collar
Rick's
and
been eyeing that for 10 years, right?
Collar and I were doing the draft show late Friday, right? And Courtney joins us, and it's shortly before the Vikings are set to take their last pick in the 3rd round. And Courtney and Collar both like, he's going to trade. I'm like, I don't know at this point. He not only works that trade with the Saints guys, but he works it to get the rest of the Saints draft. It is the most Spielman of Spielman, and I'm not saying it makes it a great draft, and I'm not criticizing it. I'm just saying this was, if there's ever been quintessential Rick, 15 picks, Rami Maklov is quintessential Rick Spielman.
I half expected him, Rami, to just announce his retirement the next day and say, my work
just go out
is
on
done.
top.
My life's work is done.
This was his Super Bowl victory. Managing to pick 14 guys in one draft was his Super Bowl victory.
So what was, aside from him just getting that many picks, what was your...
Sorry, but it's just,
No, that's all right.
It's incredible.
What Rick Spielman did, and this is a very drafty term, football drafty term. He let the board fall to him.
Football.
He didn't reach. Wow. He didn't let any good players at a position of need pass him by.
He didn't get outside himself.
He didn't get outside himself.
Football.
When he saw a player at a position of need who was among the best in the board, who might go in the next few picks, he took him. When he saw a chance to move back and get more picks and still get a player at one of those positions of need who he thought was at the top of what was left from that position group, he went and drafted him. Or he traded down if he thought he could still get him. I thought it was a brilliantly executed draft by Rick Spielman. Now, will that turn into a whole bunch of good football players? Who knows? The NFL draft is a complete and total crapshoot. But he gave himself the most chances at doing it, and like I said, let the board fall to him.
And that, what Rami just said there, is why it becomes less of a crapshoot if you have more bodies. And I think there's a case to be made for using some of your draft capital to trade for a Trent Williams, and we'll dive into those reports and discussions. But like, was there an opportunity to trade up in the first round for someone and only wind up with 12 or 13 picks in the total draft, or trade up for a player that you like in the second round a little bit better than Ezra Cleveland? Like, there's all sorts of things you can parse apart here, but ultimately when you draft 15 players, you're giving yourself the best chance that 5, 6, or 7 of them become starting caliber guys on your team. So if the goal was, let's get younger, let's retool this roster, and let's give us the best opportunity in the 2020 draft to make sure that we land like a handful or more of starting caliber players.
Right.
Well, having 15 picks is one way to go about that. It's kind of a math equation.
And I think the difference here, too, is needs, because we've seen Spielman conduct a lot of drafts where you feel like the Vikings have, let's say, 2 or 3 needs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, are you going to get that guy for that spot? This draft was, I don't recall the last time the Vikings went into a draft needing this many players at different positions. So I think you had the luxury this year of accumulating picks and just basically sitting there and making them. And so, first round receiver, awesome. That's great. Cornerbacks, take 4. That's fine. Or 3. Safeties, take 2. Tackle, take 1 or 2. So I think the difference, too, is our perception of what Spielman did is probably more positive based on the fact that the Vikings entered that draft with a plethora of needs, as opposed to the years where it's just been like, if you get a cornerback, you're fine.
Also, as Jonathan points out, the Vikings already have 12 picks in next year's draft. So
Wow.
they could wind up in a 2-year period. They could wind up drafting
Rick
27 players.
Rick really might just retire and walk off into the sunset, guys.
It's 12 right now.
Amazing.
What
It's
else is
12
left
right
for a
now?
GM to do?
Yeah, it's 12 right now. Let me get the breakdown here.
Because if it's 12 right now, he's going to have at least 2, if not 3 more compensatory picks.
that's part of the competitive.
Oh, okay.
12 is with the
The
compensatory.
point is, in 2021, if Rick is still here, and I'm assuming he will be, he's going to try to break the 2020
Do
record.
it. Go for it. 16. 31
With the
rookies and Kirk Cousins.
With the 27th
Bradbury.
pick,
cap space.
with their 27th pick of the 2021 draft.
What did the price tag wind up being again on Trent Williams? It was a fifth and a
third
for
Third
next year.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think that price, if we go back a month ago and we had this discussion on this show and said, all right, what would you give up for Trent Williams? I think all of us said, a second, for sure a third, and then let's say a future fifth if you flip-flopped him. Okay, if it was between Ezra Cleveland, so second round, young, hopeful tackle, rookie, or trade exactly what they wound up getting, a fifth and next year's third for Trent Williams, which would you guys have done if there was a choice? And we don't know if there was a choice. That's the other part of this discussion. But if there was a choice, what would you guys rather have?
I make the trade. I would have done everything in my power, without going overboard. I would have done everything in my power to get Trent Williams in a Vikings uniform, guys, because I'm trying to win games in 2020. And as much as I like this draft, and I know everybody else likes this draft who pays attention to the NFL draft, not just Vikings people. There's not one person who covers the NFL draft, who watches the NFL. Nobody who I've talked to thinks the Vikings didn't fare well over the weekend in the NFL draft. But even that being said, it's fool's gold or a fool's errand to think that these guys are going to come in and immediately make this a much better football team. That's just not how it works in the NFL. Rookies rarely have major impact, especially at the positions of need that the Vikings have and drafted. Offensive line, corner, wide receiver. These are positions where it's the hardest to make immediate impact when you get into the league. Trent Williams does that. Trent Williams comes in and immediately you're going to get a certain level of play from the guy. Yes, he didn't play at all last year. Collar, I think, said today on Score North Live, weekdays noon to 2, by the way, me and a rotating cast of Score North personalities, and anytime you want on the totally free Score North app, that he hasn't played a full 16-game season since 2013 or 2015?
2013.
Either, it's a long time. Okay, but you at least know when he's healthy, you're going to get a certain level of play from Trent Williams, and he makes your offensive line better. So I would have gone to almost any lengths within reason to make Trent Williams a Viking if that was possible.
I think they did. I think they
That's very well possible.
I think they absolutely did. And in fact, according to an NFL.com report, as of Friday, they were in contract negotiations. And then Trent or his camp said, you know what? Minnesota. Let's see. The 49ers, the Rams, and the Vikings like me. Where do I want to go? And then it leaked out, and Ian Rappaport reported that late Friday night. And of course, the Williams camp and his people came back and said, oh, we never said that. Yeah. We never said that, which of course is probably BS. I don't think it's something clandestine. I think it probably is not. It's probably not money, and it's probably not the compensation, because I do think the Vikings would have pulled the exact same trade with Washington. I think at the age of 31 going on 32, what good old Trent decided to do, and it makes sense, is look at the situations, and look at, do you want to go to the Vikings and be reunited with Kirk Cousins, who I believe you blocked for 3 years, who is a nice player, not saying he's bad. He's not. Okay. Or do you want to go to the Bay Area and play for Kyle Shanahan, who was your offensive coordinator in 2010 and is considered one of the brightest young offensive minds still in this game with a competitive team, and you're going to be stepping into Joe Staley's spot, who's retiring with a team that I think right now, right or wrong, is thought to be better than the Vikings. I think Trent probably said, I'll take Dorby.
I buy it. I buy the reports, and I'm reading this from ESPN. I'll just read this and then I'll give you my thoughts here. Washington offensive tackle Trent Williams denying that he struck down a potential trade to the Vikings because he didn't want to play in Minnesota. He told ESPN Saturday, so he went on the record with this. No, that's not true, Williams said. However, sources confirmed to ESPN that the potential trade partners were informed at some point Friday that Williams did not want to play for the Vikings, as was first reported by NFL Network. So now you have ESPN and NFL Network saying, no, like someone from his camp did say this. And I believe it. I think Trent Williams probably doesn't want it to be out there. Like, he doesn't want any bad blood. But is there a chance that he played 3 years with Kirk Cousins and was like, you know what? I don't know. I don't hate Kirk, but like 3 years with Kirk was enough for me. And if I have a chance to go play in San Francisco and all the things that Judd just mentioned. So, you know, if there was full buy-in and Trent Williams was all in and Trent Williams was all about Cousins and the Vikings, and they had a chance to get him for a fifth and a future third, I would say, yeah, I'd probably roll the dice on him staying healthy enough for 14 or 15 games. But there are, like, the fact that this guy has played in the NFL for about a decade and only twice in 9 seasons has he played 16 games, that tells you something there too. So if there's any hesitation or if there's any sort of, I'm not sure if I'm into this, then don't then look to overpay and say, well, how about we sweeten the pot by giving you more money and giving more picks?
Yeah, and
Washington.
I'm sure there are things about Trent Williams that we don't know, that either that he's a better player than maybe we think he is, or maybe he's not as good of a player as we think he is. The layman on the outside looking in, just watching NFL football. The Vikings obviously have a lot more information on Trent Williams than we do. And if some of that information makes them say he's not worth the capital that was asked for it, or if he just, for whatever reason, said, I'm not coming here, then I'm not going to go too far out of my way or too far outside the reach of what's reasonable to get Trent Williams in a Vikings uniform. But if he is anywhere close to the player that we know him to be, given his track record in the league, and if there was a way to get him here and make him happy without overpaying, I would have gone really far to make that happen.
So as it stands, they wind up with Ezra Cleveland, and if you look right now at the offensive line depth chart, they didn't really do a lot with the guard position in this draft, but is it possible that either Ezra Cleveland or Riley Reif could move inside, right?
That's exactly right.
I mean,
think left guard is solved.
But
in their minds.
if it's Riley Reif and he moves to left guard, or either way, it's only solved for 1 year,
right?
Unless you think Riley Reif is going to stick around for less money or something.
Mm-hmm.
But it is solved at least on paper for 2020, and then the right guard spot appears to be just an open competition once and if training camp